Nomad Podcast.
The quality of sleep you get has such a huge impact on your daily existence. Get a couple bad nights of sleep and you diminish your ability to function the next day. Get chronically bad sleep and you can be contributing to a host of serious health issues. Sleep is important, and it can be extra difficult when you're constantly on the road, living the nomadic lifestyle, and your sleep environment is continuously changing. Today we're talking with Bernie Miller, a sleep specialist for the Mayo Clinic in Arizona who has been treating sleep disorders for nearly 2 decades. In this conversation, we talk about some of the ramifications for getting consistently poor sleep, factors that contribute to good sleep, things you can try if and when you suffer from sleep issues, and how and when to know when the situation merits seeing a sleep specialist. Bernie is clearly a domain expert on this stuff, and this topic hits personally close to home in that it's something that I personally wrestled with. So I'm very excited to share with you now my conversation with Bernie Miller of the Mayo Clinic. Nomad Podcast is supported in part by Nomad Prep, an online academy that teaches you everything you need to know to take your job on the road and crush it abroad. Enroll today at nomadprep.com/podcast and get your first 4 days of training completely free. Nomad Prep, take your job on the road and take on the world. Okay, welcome Bernie Miller to the podcast. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right, so Bernie, this is a podcast that I do with folks who are going to be on the road quite a bit. And as we were just talking about before we got started here, it's challenging. Like I personally have had issues having done this for 2.5 years, traveling when you're moving frequently and your environment is changing. It is challenging for sleep, both falling asleep and staying asleep, at least in my case. And so I invited you. I was hoping you are a sleep specialist. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your background. You're with the Mayo Clinic?
With the Mayo Clinic's Center for Sleep Medicine in Phoenix, Arizona, and been here for probably about 17 years now, would be my guesstimate at that. I'm an assistant professor of medicine here, a clinical sleep specialist for the sleep center. I'm assistant professor, I already said that, of medicine, and I also teach at the Mayo Clinic Medical School here. I'm on faculty there too, so been doing this for quite a while.
Yeah, great.
And I think what qualifies me more to answer some of those questions is I've got a couple friends that do this, so.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to have you here just because, like I said, this hits close to home, me personally struggling with issues related to sleep. And I think maybe the place to start, can you just give us an idea, like when you're thinking about sleep, I know there's a lot of factors that contribute to getting good sleep, but what are the things to be thinking about? Like what is involved at a high level? What affects the quality of sleep that one gets?
Well, pretty much anything you do during the day is going to affect your sleep at night. So whether you have a habit where you take naps or anything like that, that can be an issue too when you take them, how long you take them. Also, if you're under a lot of stress, of course, too, that can cause it when you exercise, or if you don't exercise usually will improve your sleep a little bit, at least the level of deep sleep that you get. And of course, when you exercise matters too. And a lot of, what you do, we refer to those people a lot as digital nomads. So they're on their computers a lot because that's essentially their job. That's what they do. And there's problems with that too, as far as when you look at your computer and what you do on it when. So.
Yeah. So, and to say nothing about things like consuming coffee or alcohol and,
Oh yeah, well, coffee intake is certainly something that America loves to do. The average cup of coffee has about 137 milligrams of caffeine in it, though. And according to some new research I recently read, that it takes about 250 milligrams to maintain an alertness level for about 2.5 hours. So what happens, of course, is people who have 4 or 5 or 6 cups of coffee, they're going to, build up some caffeine in their system, and it's not really gotten rid of as quick as we think it is. So really, if you're a nomad and you travel a lot and you're having a lot of trouble sleeping, I would probably try to be pretty stingy with the coffee. Maybe switch to decaf because depending on, of course, what time zone you're in too, that'll affect that. And so when you drink coffee is very important too. We actually use that. I did a talk to some nurses a while ago, and on the night shift, they actually kind of suggest coffee intake as a strategy to maintain your alertness level. So you can also use it for that too. But if you're going to be traveling and having difficulty sleeping, I would really try to lay off the caffeine for sure.
Yeah, I personally don't drink coffee. I drink tea, though. It has a lesser amount of caffeine, as I understand it, depending on
Yeah, I
what
think
type.
there's about 80 milligrams in tea, a
Yeah.
cup of tea. So
Okay.
yeah, considerably less.
Well, before we dig into the specific strategies and the things involved with sleep, maybe let's even go a level above that and talk about what are the ramifications of getting bad sleep. Like, I know that there's, or at least I understand that there's been ties to like Alzheimer's and like reduced cognitive function. Can you talk about what is the impact of getting consistently poor sleep?
Oh, for sure. I mean, pretty much everything you said, plus your reaction times are going to be slower. You're going to be moody. Well, we actually see that with a lot of our sleep apnea patients because no matter how long they sleep, their sleep is terrible quality because they're always arousing out of sleep. If you don't get really good quality sleep and it's not stable, you're not going to get the restful sleep you need, you know. Also, that's really big, of course, in children because that's when they secrete growth hormone and stuff like that when they sleep. So if they're getting bad sleep, but there are definitely definite detriments to not getting enough sleep for sure. And some recent studies have even shown where now they think that too much sleep might actually be bad too. So
What is the optimal level of sleep? If it is not just getting enough is a matter, like it sounds like if you can get too much sleep, then what is the optimal zone of the right amount of sleep?
yeah, I read a cardiology study the other day, and they said about 6 to 8 hours. So 6 hours would be a minimum. According to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, though, there's actually a much wider range, and it's based on what your age is. So, for instance, high school age kids, so you're talking like, 16 to college age 25, they need a lot more sleep. They need about 9 hours of sleep. And name me a high school kid that gets 9 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah.
The school start times are so early in the morning, and they go to bed so late that they're definitely not getting the sleep they need. So, but usually about 7 to 9 is what the recommended is for most age groups by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine.
Okay, I think from what I've seen, at least most of the people doing what we do, going on the road like this, at least in our group when we did it, it was probably from 24 to, we had people 50 years old. So that roughly that window of folks, and it sounds like what you're saying is like that optimal window is dependent on your age. And that
Definitely is.
Okay, and then the younger you are, the more sleep you need, or is that a bell curve? So
no, that actually is not an unfair statement to make. Really, it is that way. Obviously, infants sleep a long time, and adolescents sleep more, and really it just starts to drop off after about 25 to about 55. You need that 7 to 9. And they really recently found out that, like 65 and 70 and over, you actually need a little bit less, but you're still talking 6.5 hours at a minimum, is what they suggest.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's such an important thing because it's not as simple as, like, it's a knotted issue, right? So if you're getting poor sleep, that can lead to poor cognitive function, which can lead to more stress, which can lead to worse sleep. So it can actually have like this negative spiral if it gets kicked off.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. I mean, that's what happens with insomniacs. All of a sudden, after a few nights of not sleeping very well, then you start to say things like, "Oh, I have to go to sleep," and then you go to bed and you try to go to sleep. Well, you shouldn't have to try to go to sleep. And then it becomes work. And, just like you said, Sean, it just kind of snowballs into bed becomes work. And,
Yeah.
and then you've got full blown insomnia. So.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So, and I've been in that position. Unfortunately, I've gone through a bout of that. I'm, knock on wood, I'm not there now. And I've got kind of like the rituals that let me fall asleep that I kind of I use like a diffuser with essential oils, and I've got kind of this wave machine thing that seems to help.
Sure.
But
Yep.
yeah, I've been afflicted with this. Lately, I would ask you this, and this is obviously just a personal question, but what does it mean? I don't so much anymore have trouble falling asleep, but I tend to get up at like 5 a.m. and not fall back asleep for an hour. And I don't know why that is, but do you see people who wake up from sleep at abnormal times?
Yeah, it's kind of a sleep maintenance insomnia issue too. And that actually kind of comes into play more as we age. As we get a little older, we start to have a little of that sleep maintenance insomnia where we might wake up after 3 to 4 hours of sleep. There's also a couple sleep disorders associated with that too. There's advanced sleep phase and delayed sleep phase, and they can be related to that stuff. But as long as you can wake up and, go back to sleep, you're probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
But another mistake a lot of people make is they'll lie in bed trying to fall asleep, and they'll lie there. Like, I get patients who tell me, well, I lie in bed for an hour, hour and a half sometimes before I fall asleep. Well, that's your first mistake. Don't lie in bed for an hour and a half. If you're not asleep after 20 minutes, get up, leave the bedroom, do something else, and then, like read a book or something, and then return to the bedroom when you're tired. So that would be a strategy for that.
Okay. Well, yeah. So let's talk strategies. You mentioned, for instance, like using computers. Like the folks on the road are almost certainly going to be all knowledge workers working on their computers. So that's going to come into play.
Sure.
What's the recommendation there? I know. I'm guessing you're going to say not to use it past a certain time. I would think.
Yeah, there is actually a couple of recent studies about the blue wavelength that computer screens seem to emit, and it's the blue wavelength that really helps reset our body clock, and all that's done, unfortunately, through the optic nerve. Okay, so you look at something bright, and the blue wavelength hits your optic nerve. Then it sends a signal to this little thing in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is actually your body clock. And then it says, we're awake. It's time to be awake, because of the brightness of the blue light. So you really should avoid computer screens probably at least 2 or 3 hours before bedtime.
Yeah, I try to whenever possible. Some of us that work in Europe, like right now I'm in Portugal, have to maintain U.S. hours, and so we'll be on calls into the night. I use something for my computer called Flux, which on a Mac it takes the blue wavelength out after sundown.
Nice.
And there's something called Night Shift for the iPhone that will do the same thing on your phone. So it's not ideal, but it's a strategy for the folks listening that there are some ways to at least mitigate the blue wavelength issue.
Yeah, I have that Night Shift on my phone, and I guess there's actually a couple studies reviewing whether that works or not. But yeah, it seems to work for me though. Like you said, the screen darkens but
it may even be a placebo, because when it happens, I can like when I turn it off, I almost feel like, sometimes to get the color right, if you're doing photo stuff, you've got to disable it, and then all of a sudden the blue comes back and you're like, oh no, it's daytime, and it could be just placebo at this point. But I see.
Well, sure, maybe you've made it a ritual.
There you
Your
go.
phone goes down and you go down.
There you go. Cool. All right. Well, so that's computer strategies. What about you mentioned diet as a potential effect, whether it's caffeine, but I'm assuming foods as well. Is there any type of foods that we shouldn't be eating past a certain point?
Yeah, most sleep people think you shouldn't go to bed hungry. Okay, but you also shouldn't go out there and eat a huge meal either. And it's carbohydrates that really keep you awake, because carbs, your body really has to work to digest carbs, and that will, fragment your sleep and keep you awake. So you're better off if you have like a protein snack or something before bed, you're probably better off with proteins, because carbohydrates will help wake you up, and your GI system has to work harder with carbohydrates. So maybe a little quick protein snack. And I mean, if you're looking at that, you might as well have turkey. Turkey has L-tryptophan in it too. So that's a sleep inducer. So that actually may help you sleep a little bit.
Okay. What about things like, I'll do like a chamomile tea. Is there any validity or sleep inducing qualities to that? Or is, again, that just kind of more?
Yeah, I think that's more of a personal preference, relaxation, and placebo kind of effect to a lot of people. But yeah, there are many people use a combination of that tea and relaxation and stuff like that to kind of unwind for the day. You know, the trouble is, of course, like you said, you do have to be careful of the caffeine. So
Right.
just make sure you're drinking a tea without caffeine.
So herbal only, no caffeine tea.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. What about anything? So, some of these variables we can control, things like diet and computer usage and whatnot, but some, like the changing environment, it's just, that is what it is. There's no way to get around it. If you're moving every month or every week, you're going to have a new bed, you're going to have a new unfamiliar environment. Are there anything we can do to control for that factor, like a changing bed or?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a big issue. I mean, because everybody, you have what we call first night effect. And we have that in our patients that we do sleep studies on sometimes too. They have first night effect and they just can't sleep. Like even when I go to a conference or something, I'll know that first night my sleep is terrible. Second night, a little bit better. By the time I'm ready to come home, I'm sleeping pretty good, so I disrupt that. But also, if you are traveling by air, it's usually easier to move your body clock forward than it is backwards. So if you move back in your time zones, you can look forward to having more issues. But forward in your time zones is easier on your body, so you have less issues. But I would consider at least taking a couple familiar items with me, familiar bed items to kind of make the foreign bed your own and probably help your mind relax a little bit and stuff too. I know now a lot of travelers too, they buy those sleep sacks that they have now. So you actually, it's just like, it's kind of a silk or satin material, and you actually slide into it like a sleeping bag.
Okay.
But and that's because a lot of people now don't seem to trust hotel sanitation very well and stuff. So they actually take one of these devices with them and slide in between those and sleep in the bed.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, take like a familiar pillow or something, anything that can help relax you. Of course, also there's melatonin. So if you're
that was going to be my next question, is how you feel about melatonin as a sleep aid.
Sure. Well, it's a naturally secreted substance. Your pineal gland secretes that, and that's actually what induces sleep for us. Your body clock works on a temperature. There's a circadian temperature scale, and as night approaches, the temperature drops and melatonin secretion begins. All right. Now, sometimes, you'll go to a foreign country and that's still messed up a little. So if you take melatonin to supplement that, you can actually help initiate that shift in body temperature and maintain your sleep better.
Is there any danger? Because I've taken melatonin and I've had success with it, but I got a little concerned that, I'm taking this foreign substance that I'm now going to need in order to fall asleep. I don't want to become addicted to some, even if it's a naturally occurring substance, if I need an external source of it. Is there any danger of becoming addicted to melatonin like that, or am I?
Not that I've ever heard. And usually just for traveling purposes and jet lag and stuff, you would only take like 3 milligrams of melatonin, And they've actually given laboratory animals 3,000 times the normal adult human dosage, and it has had no harmful effects for them. So they're not really worried too much about the harmful effects of melatonin. It's also a powerful antioxidant too. So there are some advantages to that. The thing that is difficult with melatonin is the timing. Okay. And usually that ends up being a 2-hour to 45-minute time frame. So some people benefit taking it 2 hours before bed, and others benefit taking it just 45 minutes before bed. So that you would have to kind of find that sweet spot for yourself, most likely.
Okay, but that's good to know that it's not, that maybe that concern is unfounded, that it could become an addiction. It's not in the same class as something like an Ambien or one of those.
No. And we actually, there's a sleep disorder called REM behavioral disorder that we can use melatonin to treat with some success, and we give those patients like 15 milligrams. So I'm pretty sure melatonin is a safe substance. So.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the distinction between deep sleep and REM sleep, and what this, like, what does what is the function of each, and what does it mean? How do you know when you're in
Sure.
deep sleep?
Well, deep sleep, what we call delta sleep or stage 3 and 3 sleep, that is the deep and restful sleep that you get. And usually that occurs within the first 3 to 4 hours that we're in bed. Okay, and usually in the first third of the night, you have your restful delta sleep. Then you have REM periods interspersed throughout the night, usually 3 to 5 REM periods. And the first one will be short, the second one will be a little longer. And the last one, and just before you wake up, you'll usually have the longest, most intense period of REM sleep. And its total makeup is about 25% of your total night sleep. But during REM, we're really not resting. Actually, REM is pretty busy. Our body is actually in a state of paralysis during REM, so you really can't move. But our brain is really working overtime. In fact, our oxygen consumption increases about 50% in our brain during REM sleep.
And
One of the
do they know
theories,
what's happening during this period? Like, what is actually going on?
well, there's several different theories for that, and the most accepted one is the back up your hard drive theory. You know, that your brain is actually just sorting out stuff and putting it where it belongs in your brain. You know, and that's pretty much the most accepted theory. And during REM, your blood pressure actually fluctuates a lot, and the only muscle you have that works is your diaphragm for breathing. So a lot of patients, if they have sleep problems and stuff like that, or sleep disorders, they will be much worse during REM. Like our sleep apnea patients, they don't breathe well, anyway. And once they hit REM, their oxygen levels usually drop, and their apnea usually gets much worse. Because again, the only muscle of breathing working is your diaphragm. So REM sleep is actually, our body is probably resting because it's in the state of paralysis, but our brain is really working overtime.
So how does one know if they have sleep apnea? I mean, I suppose you do a sleep study to find that out, or is there another way for someone to self-diagnose whether they have something like sleep apnea?
Yeah, one of the things to really watch out for is maybe all of a sudden you've got high blood pressure, you didn't have it before. You're a really loud snorer. I've had some gentlemen would go to a hunting camp with their buddies, and then the next night they would sleep out in their pickup truck because they got kicked out, from loud snoring and things. And of course, it's nice to have a bed partner to complain, and say, you're snoring really bad, or I heard that I even heard you stop breathing during the night. But one of the symptoms of that for an individual that you could recognize would be you'd get really sleepy during the day. If you have really bad sleep apnea, your sleep is fragmented, sometimes hundreds of times a night. Even though you don't know it, it's an insidious disease, so it creeps up on you. But loud snoring and daytime sleepiness is really the big one. So they would have trouble driving long distances, or staying awake as a passenger in a car, or sitting down to watch TV, things like that. Yeah.
Got it. And that's separate than something like narcolepsy, which is falling asleep just spontaneously during the daytime, or is that related?
Oh yeah, narcolepsy is a neurological disorder, and there really isn't any cure for narcolepsy. But what happens with narcoleptics is they'll actually be talking to you and enter REM sleep. And you remember I mentioned that REM sleep is a state of paralysis. So what happens is they'll have what they call a cataplectic attack. So they will stand there, they'll be talking, all of a sudden they'll just collapse. And that's because they lose that muscle tone by going into REM sleep. So unfortunately, there is no cure for narcolepsy. So it's important to diagnose those people and get them treated, correctly. So.
Okay. Well, I don't have many more questions. I mean, this is like, there's so many avenues we could go down here, but I guess it's really a matter of what's going to be the most useful. When is it appropriate to seek a sleep study? If you feel like you're not getting good sleep, is there anything you do on your own, or at what point do you actually say, okay, I'm going to go to a doctor and actually get this checked out?
Yeah, there's even some apps available now where you can log on and answer a couple of questions. As a matter of fact, I read that soon the Apple Watch is going to have a diagnostic tool. Of course, it's not diagnostic officially, but that'll, if you wear it for a week, it'll tell you that whether or not you have sleep apnea.
Interesting.
There's also a couple of devices. One company makes a device that you set on your nightstand that emits radio waves, and it actually can pick up periods of, when you stop breathing and things like that. So there's a number of things you can actually do to self-test, and then of course you would have to see a sleep specialist.
Okay.
Because there's a number of different therapies that you could use depending on the severity of what you have. So yeah, once you suspect something, I would look up my local sleep specialist and go see them, and then they would decide if testing is required or not.
Got it. Just thought of one more, just because this tends to coincide with what I've seen in these groups. Alcohol is a very real thing. Like there's people that all come together in these nomad groups. They'll go out and they'll party. What is the effect of alcohol? It makes you feel like you can go to sleep, but my understanding is that it gives you not as restful sleep when you go to bed drunk.
Oh yeah, you're doing your homework. You're doing your homework, Sean. Maybe a small amount of alcohol might help you relax to fall asleep. We're talking maybe 1 drink, 4 ounces of wine or something like that. But anything greater than that is definitely going to fragment your sleep at night, and you're not going to sleep as well. Also, it's a respiratory depressant. So if you do have any issues in sleep and breathing, then alcohol is going to make that worse. But even in a normal individual without any disorders, it's going to fragment your sleep at night.
Yep.
So not really good, probably 3 to 4 hours before bedtime.
Okay. I can say anecdotally, unrelated to alcohol, like I have a deviated septum from a fight a long time ago. And
Sure.
I found that something that I didn't know, I would get like dehydrated. I'd wake up and, obviously you have to get up and you have to drink, and then you have to pee, and then you have to go back to bed, and just like this vicious cycle of keeping you awake. Something that I found that helped me was those nasal strips that would like stent your nose open enough where I would actually be able to breathe through my nose and not be breathing through my mouth.
The breathe right strips, they actually, in a couple studies that they did, they decreased nasal airway resistance by about 30%. So they do work. They're certainly not for sleep apnea or anything like that, but they do help with people with deviated septums and stuff too. So yeah, they actually do work for that.
Yeah, so maybe if you're listening and you have issues, maybe give that a try. It did help me quite a bit, so I'm just relating that here.
Sure. I would say if you do snore with one of those devices in place, though, and you still snore, then you've got more of a problem. You should see a sleep specialist for that.
Okay, so maybe that's kind of a litmus test. If you try that, and if you still snore and your partner says that, then maybe that's
could
fine.
be. I would definitely see somebody for that.
Okay. Great. Well, Bernie, I don't have any other questions. I was going to bring up, thank you for your service. Like I watched the video. We were talking before you got on here. I know your vet, your son, there's a video, I'll link it in the show notes, of Bernie's son coming back from Afghanistan. He was as well in the service, and it's really kind of a tearjerker. And I'll link that here if you want to check it out. But thank you for your service in the military.
You're welcome, Sean, and yeah, thanks for posting the thing about the video too. It's pretty awesome. It does make the rounds every now and then, for sure. So
yeah, well, it's really it's touching, and yeah, I doubt many people have a dry eye after seeing it. So I'll link that.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, Berg, I know you're very busy. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Sure. If you need anything in the future, Sean, let me know. And this was fun.
Okay, will do. If people have questions on this episode, are you up for maybe answering those if I send those to you?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
All right, Sean, thanks a lot.
All right, be well.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was my conversation with Bernie Miller. He has agreed to answer any questions, so if you have any, go ahead and leave them under the episode as a comment, written comment, or a video comment. And if you think you might be suffering from a sleep disorder, talk to your physician and see about setting up an appointment with a sleep specialist to get that looked at. Okay, so as I mentioned at the end of the last episode, I'm going to be taking a bit of a break from content production. We're going to do one more guest. I have Alex Hillman of the 30 by 500 Academy who's going to be joining us. This is an online course for budding entrepreneurs to help you get to your first $10,000 in sales on whatever side venture you're launching. So it's a very interesting course. I know a number of people who have gone through it and have nothing but good things to say about it. And it can help you basically avoid a lot of pitfalls. And in the nomadic scene, I talk to a lot of people who are interested in starting their own thing. So I think this will be of interest to a lot of people. So if you looked at starting your own business, this is definitely an episode you're going to want to catch. And then, like I said, after that, I'm going to take a little bit of a break, pause the content production, and I will let you know if you're subscribed, then you'll get the next episode whenever that is. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping here. If you're considering doing a nomadic travel program, you can save up to $300 off select programs simply by applying via our discounts page. You'll find that link in the footer of our site under program discounts, or simply go to nomadpodcast.com/discounts to apply for any of the available programs. Note that if you do apply directly to the program itself, it does invalidate your opportunity to get this discount. So be sure to apply via the form on our website. Nomad Podcast is supported in part by Nomad Prep, an online academy for aspiring digital nomads taught by yours truly that teaches you everything you need to know to make the transition to the digital nomad lifestyle. Get the first 4 days of this 2-week program completely free by going to nomadprep.com/podcast. Nomad Prep, take your job on the road and take on the world. If you are a blogger, a travel blogger, we have a platform now that you can apply to and get your content syndicated to reach a wider audience. Simply go to nomadbloggers.com and click on the blue submit link in the header to add your blog. If you've enjoyed the content, the greatest compliment you can give is just to share this to your friends. So consider sharing it on your Facebook, on your Instagram, maybe your LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you use. Would love for you to just spread the word and help get some more listenership for the podcast. Also, leaving a rating and a review helps a lot. So whatever podcast platform you're listening on, if you are, or if you're watching on YouTube, then this doesn't apply to you. But if you're listening on a podcasting platform, please consider leaving a rating and review, as it does help grow our listenership. So as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting this effort. I hope you find it useful. This is all pro bono at this point, but it's for a good cause. So until next time, it's a big world out there. Get out there and explore it. I'll see you on the road.
Nomad.